Formula Access. I told you I'd be bringing the people of motorsports to your doorstep, and today I'm going to spread my wings a bit. Today we have a publicist. So if any of you guys watch the news, if any of you guys wonder why drivers react in certain ways in certain situations, today we got Alexandra Schieren. She is a publicist for a young driver who will be on the show later by the name of Aliyah Kolik. She is going to be competing in the 2023 Dakar race. She is also a publicist for Simon Pagenaud. So you guys prepare yourself. We had a great conversation. We were a bit limited on time. And after the recording, I think we both agreed that we could do another episode. So this is becoming very normal. I apologize for the very, very long episodes, but there's a ton of stuff to unpack. A fan myself, this is stuff I like to hear. So just pause it, listen later, keep it going. All of these conversations are phenomenal. Alexandra is one of them. Thank you and enjoy. Formula Access, welcome. Today, I told you I'd be bringing motorsports to your doorstep. Today, once again, we have another wheel in the cog to bring you. We have Alexandra Schieren. She's in PR for drivers in Formula One, IndyCar, and Formula E. I came across her trying to reach out to an unnamed IndyCar driver that we can get into later. And as I was sending the email to reach out to him, I thought, wow, the perspective of somebody in PR at that level would be a fascinating conversation. So Alexandra, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Lovely to talk to you.
So Alexandra is highly regarded in this world as I've gone through her social media and I've gone through her website. We come from a marketing family, so those are things that we spend a lot of time looking at. She's been in the industry for a very long time at a very, very high level. So when I finally came across your profile and your information, I just I had to have you on the show. I'm so glad that you agreed to this and telling us about how you got where you are and what you do and what your contribution to motorsports is. So our audience is generally from the US with, more of a deep understanding of IndyCar and a deep understanding of Formula One. And that audience is starting to spread out more and more as we start to bring in people from around the world. So just at a very high level, what are you doing today? Like, just to let the audience know what you do, so I don't butcher it.
Right. Do you want a long or a short story?
Just an introduction. I'll dig in. Don't worry.
No. So as Rod said, so my name is Alexandra Schieren. I'm looking back at sort of 25 years in motorsports. I completely ended up there by accident, really. We can maybe go into that a little bit later. I worked in many, I worked in rally, in GT, in IndyCar racing, in Formula One, mainly Formula One, many, many years. A little bit of everything, really. And a couple of years ago, I decided to start my own business. And still, I've always looked at the motorsports, communications, and PR. So really different sides of it. So I worked for teams. I worked actually also for the Federation, the FIA. I worked for sponsors, and now I'm having my own business.
That is fascinating. You've worked for, Pirelli, who is the single source tire supplier for Formula One, and we all know the FIA. So and I really want to dig into the entrepreneur side of what you're doing as well. But okay, so just to kind of back this up and just unpack what PR actually is, explain to us in PR for a driver, what are you actually doing for them, or what service are you providing?
There's different sides to it. It depends really on what level a driver is. It's not the same if you have like a high level driver who's winning races, who's won championships in big international series, or if you're talking about young and upcoming drivers. I actually work with both ends of the spectrum. So I work, for example, with a 17-year-old German rally car driver, and on the upper end with an Indy car racer who's won the Indy 500. So it's not the same. So generally, you would say the service you provide is media opportunities. Let's do it differently. Let's talk about, for example, you have a high-level driver. Basically, you run their image. You sort of speak to the media. You look at opportunities. You sort of are a little bit the gate opener because driver hasn't got the time, and it's not his job either to look at all of that. So you would speak to the media. Would look at opportunities, which interviews he wants to do. You look at the full picture. You look at the strategy of everything, about really it's reputation management in a way. And when you go to the other end of the spectrum, sort of young and upcoming driver, it's really not about teaching them how everything works. It's okay, you're racing a car, that's great, but there's lots of other things to it. So you need to teach them, there's media there, there's social media there is partners there, sponsors. It's a big package you have to provide if you want to go up the motorsport ladder and be a professional racer. So I guess our job is, and we're a small boutique agency, if you like, our job is to just look at what the client needs and provide it to them.
So what is the difference between PR, publicist, marketing, social media? Are you managing all of this for a driver?
Not personally, it's impossible. No, it's all different aspects or that you name. So publicist is probably it's more the American term. I think sort of public relation is maybe the big word for everything. So it's what it is. It's the relations with the public. So, and these can be via the media, via an event, via partners, via social media. So all of these build like the full package and come back to the reputational management. Marketing is maybe a little bit outside because marketing is more about looking at a product. You could also say, okay, a driver is also a product. Yes, but that's sort of a little bit, it's more like the packaging, how you sell the product, etc. That's more marketing. PR is really how you sell that to the public in the end, really.
I think that's fascinating that you're able to work at those two levels, at the very beginning and at the peak, and be able to operate that. Is it any different in between series? Like, does your role evolve if you move from Formula One to IndyCar to rally?
Oh yeah. It's complete different worlds in a way. Obviously, they're all motor racing in some sort of shape or form. But for example, Formula One is a very controlled is not the word, sort of maybe very organized world. So everything comes with a rule or with a structure or with something you can or cannot do. And obviously I've worked for the FIA, so it's again, it's a different level. So because you are like the governing body for the whole championship, so you're looking at lots of rules and regulations and making sure that everybody else sort of sticks to them. So Formula One likes to call itself pinnacle of motorsport, and I'm hoping I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, particularly in IndyCar others, but it is in a way, because it is obviously a fully international series. It sort of goes to, I don't know, 20, I don't know how many countries, but 24 races and quite a lot of countries and all continents. And you have to have a certain structure, otherwise it just wouldn't work. And obviously it's high level. So IndyCar is obviously more focused on the American market. It's it comes with the American culture and American way of looking at things, which is very much different to the European way where Formula One really originates in, even though now it's owned by Liberty, which is American again. So that is changing as well. So that's quite interesting actually looking at that. But at the basis, sort of how things look at the original. And yeah, rallying is more like a family. Everybody sort of works together. It's probably also all the grassroots series you have, sort of all the series that sort of moving up to Formula One and IndyCar in America. So yeah, they're all very, very different when it comes to atmosphere, to structure, etc. But in the end, sort of when it comes to public relations, the word again, the bases are the same. You know, you just need to adapt, obviously, to what the public wants.
I think it's important to note too. I don't feel like you were stepping on anyone's toes. I think, you know, yeah, Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport, but I also think that they're so different yet synergetic in a way. I mean, you've got a constructor series that's very focused on the manufacturer or the team, and then you have another series in IndyCar which is very focused on the driver. It's a spec series, and I think they're so complementary to each other, especially as sports begins to explode, and there's a lot of crossover happening, you know, even with team ownership, and I think they're kind of almost mutually exclusive these days, and it's been neat to watch, because I think I don't know, most people don't know the difference between the two, and you know, you wonder why is Daniel Ricciardo not winning races, you know, and he's so highly regarded. Well, it's because, you know, it's a manufacturer sport and the cars are different and they have different logic behind them, and I think, you know, I think that's a great case study for, you know, how your role plays into that drivers. How would you handle that type of situation? Because that's obviously, to me, as a marketing person, I feel like it's brand destruction for both parties. So how would you vet or like solve that?
Well, Daniel Ricciardo?
Yeah.
How much time do you have?
I didn't mean to load that up, but I was just, as I was asking the question, I was like, why? I mean, a marketing person is one thing, but like as somebody in charge of image, you know, personally, a huge fan. I'm more of a fan of the sport and the competition and pressure of the sport. But I also, to me, the commercial value of a driver like him is so unbelievably strong. It's like, I don't know, if you took LeBron James and put him on the worst basketball team out there with no support. I mean, and I'm not saying that he doesn't have any support. I'm just saying that it's not a spec series, and you kind of watch McLaren's brand being destroyed equally as Daniel's is, and how does a publicist at just a really high level, like how could you communicate that it's more than just an engine?
I mean, Formula One is cutthroat, really. So you always get compared to the best, and the best in that case is your teammate, for example. And because they are definitely the same car, they definitely mostly have the same support, etc., etc. So if your results are not up to that, then it becomes a pressure, and you feel that pressure externally and internally, definitely as well. So after that, it's very much up to, it's a personality thing, you know. You need to stand up to that pressure. You need to be able to go beyond that pressure. So some drivers, probably, I don't know all of them, but I would guess quite a lot work with sort of psychologists, sort of mental trainers, to sort of get to that point, because they all have talent and they all know how to drive a car. But it was any high level sport, you know, in the end, it's that little bit of a thing that makes a difference, you know. And but more from the publicist side of things, I think the only thing you can do is to be honest, and that's really one of my biggest policies. I try to be honest obviously sometimes you cannot say everything. It's just not possible because of legal reasons, because you simply don't want to, or whatever. But try and say as much as you can, because when people have the impression you actually trying to hide something, then you are definitely are in trouble. And then they obviously come and poke and want to know what's going on, and things become more pressured. But yeah, be honest, try and say what you can, or even say, I would like to answer that question, but I can't because of a legal structure or whatever. And then really you have to live with the consequences. I mean, sometimes you make decisions and they don't work out. I mean, Daniel is probably the example of, there's another driver as well, but having maybe taken the wrong decision at the wrong time. But you never know, you know, you make a decision and hope for the best, and then you think afterwards, oh, okay, no. But you have to live with that. So I think he's a great guy, you know, and he's obviously, as I say, he brings so much to Formula One because he's one of the, he really has personality. He shows, like, he shines. Even obviously he has this big smile, and he so yeah, it would be a big loss for Formula One not to have him anymore, because he's a great ambassador. But he probably needs a bit more support, yeah, to live up to these decisions you made and sort of live with them.
I think that conversation really showcases the importance of a role like yours for any driver at any level. I think, you know, I tend to steer clear away from allowing parents of young drivers to call their child a product, even though, you know, as we discussed, of course they are a product. But, you know, I think that having a professional at arm's length involved and, you know, these decisions and how, what the optics of them are, is really, really important. It's like a brand coach, you know. I'm fascinated by what you do because I know the power of marketing, and I know, you know, the optics can sometimes come off weird, you know, especially when the media gets a hold of it and just they start to poke. You're totally right. If you are not genuinely authentic, even if it's, I don't know, you know, or I can't, you can't poke at that, you know, it's off limits. Whereas if you're half truthing and maybe being deceitful, you know, it makes it. I come from sales, so, you know, your interrogation skills and sales, you know, define success. And when you see that hole, you kind of zero in on it. And let's clarify this for a second here. So I think
actually have an interesting, sorry, I just
No,
have
go
an
ahead.
interesting story to tell you with that sort of thing about not telling quite the truth and things like that. It's quite a while ago, and most people will not ever heard about it or forgotten. It is Toyota in rallying in the end of the 90s, and they got found cheating quite badly, and the car and the team got disqualified. They got disqualified for the whole season. It was actually quite bad. So, and I was there in the press office. I was a junior press assistant at the time, and I was sitting there. I was looking at things. I thought, okay, we've been found cheating. So, and then it went. The management said, okay, we put out a press release and say it's a manufacturer's issue. And even like having a year or so of experience, I said, we cannot say that. I mean, I don't know what the issue is, but to say it's somebody else's problem or fault, it's probably not the best thing to do. And I sort of timidly tried to say that. I said, no, go away. No, we're going to do this. Okay. and they did put that out, and then hell really literally broke loose, and everybody was like, what's this manufacturer fault? What is this? And who did it? And what is it? And all the rest of it. And it turned out really badly. And sort of in the end, when it went to the FIA, it got sort of to the court of their sort of court of justice, I think it's called, and sort of they got banned, as I said, banned from competition. And when I worked later on for the FIA, I actually had that conversation with Max Mosley, the president at the time, and he said the worst thing was that they lied. If they hadn't lied, or if they sort of at least said we don't know, and then sort of tried to establish the truth, that was what wasn't correct, you know. So that's maybe why this is my biggest sort of thing in my job, because I really learned that very, very early on. So I don't know.
I think that taking ownership and being honest is always just it's the you can't attack that, and I think you're totally right. I love the connections too that all the guests have to all of the names that you hear on, Drive to Survive and in the news and in the media. Like, you've gotten a chance to sit with Max and, have those conversations about, what did you think about this response? And, have them say like genuinely, yeah, it felt deceitful and they lied and there was a consequence for that. There was something on your profile that I thought, we see a ton of this in the news, and I think it's you have crisis management on your profile. And look, we all know and junior support series, and I've got a story afterwards about that, but how important is that in your role when somebody does something, says something pokes out in the news? I mean, I think of names like Yuri Vips or Nikita Mazepin, and just how do you address that?
It obviously depends on the situation. There's no one for all, really. So I've been sort of in quite sort of a fair share of crises, and the thing is, there is no one for all. You just need to. First thing is probably you need to establish the facts, the real facts, and then you need to sit down internally and decide how much of that you can share with the public or want to share with the public, and then you need to stick to it. I mean, every company, every team that respects itself will probably have a crisis management plan. So where it says, okay, this constitutes a crisis. In case this happens, this person will only speak to the media, nobody else speaks to the media. This is how things go. Basically, the line of events is set before. Now, every crisis is different, and you will not have written everything on paper. So, and the level of crisis is different as well. Sometimes the best response is to say nothing for a day or two, and just wait until everybody had time to breathe and sort of and most of the time it's not as bad as it maybe looks like at first. Obviously some things are serious, some things are bad, and some things are really unchangeable. And the worst obviously in motor racing is when there is a fatal accident. Obviously that's sort of the worst thing that can happen to anyone. And anything else, really, I think I always say try and put in perspective. Yeah, it is maybe bad. It might be detrimental to the brand. It might be detrimental to the driver. But yeah, just sit and look how you can change. That's sort of the line of events, I would say.
So this is one thing that I love about these conversations, and I really want fans to pay attention to is I see it so many times just from fan, because you have the media that's like story, and then you have fan engagement through social media, which is like the response of the news. And there's so much kind of chatter when everybody goes quiet, and it's like, this happened, explain yourself, and everybody's really quiet. And I think it's really important and very, very wise of you to mention that they're not doing that maybe out of fear or embarrassment, but out of, let's let the emotion draw out of this situation. We all know when it first hits you, you're kind of like, emotional, you react, you don't always make the best decision. And then once you've had time to process it and let it settle in and really, just again, push the emotion out of the circumstance, you can then articulate authentically and genuinely, and as we said before, honestly. So I think it's a very wise of you to even offer up that advice to drivers, because I think immediately people want to jump in front of stuff and and sometimes I guess you're jumping in front of a moving train and it doesn't always end well.
Exactly. I mean, there's something we probably learned back in PR school. I don't know that still teach that, but it's something called a holding statement, and that can be written, but that can be verbal as well, and it's just something that says we acknowledge X, Y, and Z happened. We're establishing the facts. As soon as we know more, we'll let you know. End of story. And that gets it. But also I think it's important to distinguish between a real crisis and something that is made to be a crisis. Social media in particular, sometimes every little thing becomes like at least 10 times as big, probably bigger. And let's be honest, most of the things are not worth anybody's time. They just will go away by themselves eventually. And you have to pick your battles as well. Not every battle is worth fighting, and sometimes you just have to let it go.
Has social media changed kind of the velocity of, I don't know, call it crisis or news? I mean, has it changed your role over the last decade?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's obviously more permanent. It's there 24/7, always, really. So you need more people, obviously, to monitor things, but yeah, and things move much faster. The news comes out quicker. It comes out all the time. So as I said, sometimes it's not in your favor. Sometimes it is. So you just need to pick and choose. But it's not also for the PR, but also the other side. We work with a lot. So talk about the media. So for the media, it changed immensely. Social media and the internet itself. So obviously they have to put out news much faster all the time. People want new news like every 5 minutes, and it's a lot of work, and news gets copied. Somebody claims news for themselves. Somebody just makes up some news. So it really becomes like, I don't know, a big forest, and you have to cut through that and really look, where's the tree I want to go to, so what is the real news here? The sources, it's I guess in some ways it's become more complicated because there's so much of it. And on the other hand, obviously it made it easy as well, because you can use it to your own advantage and obviously get news out faster to more people. It's both ways.
I had a wind tunnel tech on yesterday, and we were just talking about the complexity of aerodynamics, and every element everywhere affects everything. So it's, instead of saying like 1 + 2 = 3, it's this like dynamic 3D model where every input affects every other aspect of this model. And I agree with you. I think that the content craving that motorsports fans have is they're consuming content faster than it's being created right now. And just that need and desire for information is really, really strong. I view your job as like, I'm like a sci-fi nerd, and I think that every time an event or circumstance happens, it's like an end game when Doctor Strange is like, doing his thing, and he's like, I just went over 10 million different scenarios and only one of them worked, and you're having to just do that all the time. Okay, so next question that I have to ask, and I think it's really important. What is your origin story? How on earth did you end up in the pinnacle of motorsports everywhere? You're at the pinnacle of everything. How did you end up here?
Completely by accident is the answer, really. And long time ago, actually it was probably one of my first jobs, really, and it makes me sound really old now, but at the time you actually answered job ads in the paper. Probably nobody remembers this, but and so I saw Toyota and I thought, yeah, PR assistant Toyota, and it looked like something, well, I give it a try. And I had no idea, I swear, that actually was the rally team of Toyota. And at the time, internet maybe existed, but not for normal people. So you couldn't make all the research and all that, you know. So I turned up at this interview, and for some reason, they took me on. I have no idea why. So I ended up to be the PR assistant in Toyota's rally team, and really learned by doing. You know, I have had no affinity in motorsports. Nobody of my family had ever watched a race. Um, I didn't even know, and that okay, I tell you, I didn't even know the difference between a rally car and a Formula One car, because you know. So it was quite a steep learning curve, I have to say. So I did manage it. Because I found it fascinating. It was interesting because actually my education is languages. The first education I have is languages, so translator, and I love this international context really. So being able to speak to different people in different languages, coming from different backgrounds, that really what interests me, or interested me at the time. And then I learned about the cars, and that came after that. And then I liked the cars, and I thought, well, this is not bad. And I learned everything about it. And yeah, so this really came learning by doing. And once I said my time at Toyota ended rather sharply when they got found cheating and they had to reduce the team. And I didn't get fired, strangely enough, but I looked for another job, because a rally team that doesn't do rallies is, you know, not really very interesting at the time, unfortunately. So and then it really is a small world. I guess it's like any sort of probably like films or cinema or fashion or something, you know. People know each other, and then when people knew I was looking for a job, I got offered a job to work for an agency, a PR agency in England. So I went to London. I worked with them for a couple of years, and there really I learned everything. You know, we did GT, we did touring cars, we did all sorts of things, and also Formula One. So and their main job at the time was they worked with the local promoters, so to do the media side of things, the media center, media accreditation. You look about probably at the time at least 400 to 500 journalists per race. So this is a huge amount of numbers to look after, you know. And that was our job, to support the FIA, because they can't do it themselves. Obviously, they rely on the promoter to do that kind of job for them, and then they just say yes, no, we like it, we don't like it, etc. So I worked for that agency for a couple of years, did a few races, well, different races, because we worked for different promoters. So I had got a lot of experience there. And after that, I got offered a job by the FIA, really, when they were looking for somebody initially to work in the rally department. So this is where the dots go back, you know, they go back to the rally team. So I worked for them for a little while. It's like a maternity cover. And that went really well. And then they just a girl who did the job of well, who was the F1 media delegate, it's called. So basically, you are the spokesperson for Formula One for the FIA, and that job got like liberated, and they offered me the job, and I said no. I said, what do you mean no? I said no. I've seen it in action, you know, from the other side. You know, I've worked with the promoters and I've seen the FIA on that job, and it looked like such a stressful, unthankful job to have. And I said, oh, no way I'm going to do this. So I said, okay, so how can we make you like it? You know, what it is you need, so you accept it. So we in the end we worked out a couple of rules, and I thought I give it a try, and if really it's so horrible, then I go. And I ended up doing it for 6 years, really, which was really an interest. I mean, it was probably the most interesting job I've ever had, apart from my own company now. But because it is stressful, it is unthankful. You get sort of the blame for everything, and you cannot win, basically, you know. So it just and also you are between the media, the promoter, the teams. It's very, very interesting, and I learned a lot. And yeah, it was, and then it was time to move on from there. When Pirelli came back to Formula One, and they were looking for somebody, a communications manager, to really look after their return to Formula One, the strategy behind what to do, how to set up the communications office, and all the rest of it. So I did that. And then eventually I decided I had enough of traveling, probably 20 years of traveling the world, and it got more and more races, and you do the races, you test, you do the events, you do. I was never home, basically. And I thought, you know,
Get it.
I think it's time to call it a day and do something else, you know, and here we are.
So I think I love that journey, because I first off, yeah, I think that's working for the FIA is probably a very thankless job. I always think of it as like the press secretary for the president. You're just like you're like a bulletproof vest for the president, you know. And it's kind of like, because you think of, you know, the spy gates, you think of the, oh geez, I mean, now you have the cost cap stuff. I mean, you just like, can you let us do our job? Let's figure it out, and then we'll get back to you. And everybody wants to ask a million questions about, you know, good old boy clubs and, you know, favoritism. And it's just like, stop. we're an actual organization here. Let us do our jobs. You know, there's none of that stuff in here. Stop with the drama. And then to go to Pirelli, which is obviously, you know, a major brand, but also, you know, I mean, they've done a phenomenal job of being a single tire supplier in the sport. That's always been an issue in the past, and it seems like it's been a successful endeavor for everyone over the.
Well, that is it's an unthankful job as well, you know, being a single tire manufacturer. So really, I was going from one end of the spectrum to the other one, really, because again, if a driver wins, it's obviously the driver and the car, and if he loses, then obviously it's tires. So you know, you cannot win either. But again, it was quite interesting, and also the circle closes there, because I was there, and people in America will remember it, probably, if you're a motorsport fan. United States Grand Prix 2005.
Yep.
Six cars participating. That was my third race at the FIA as the FIA media delegate.
Oh.
Talking about crisis, you know, and that was impressive. You know, that was tire management, that was crisis management, that was like, oh my god. And I had a really awesome boss at the time. And when the race started and all the cars went to the grid, and I was on the bus to my phone, because on the phone to my boss, and I said, so they're going to start, and he said, let's wait. And then they all pulled in, and there's only six cars starting, and I said to him, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And he's like, you watch the race, what else are you going to do, you know? so so we learned crisis management there. But and then working for Pirelli, obviously I knew a little bit of tires, and it's interesting as well. You know, you have like a monopoly, and yeah, so you need also to tell the stories. Coming back to PR, you know, tell the story of a monopoly isn't very easy, because what story do you tell, you know? So if there isn't a problem, obviously you don't want to talk about that, so you need to create stories. So it was quite interesting, actually. You do storytelling, you know. I remember I got Sebastian Vettel at the time to participate in a tire fitting challenge with my boss, the Pirelli boss at the time, which was cool, you know. So because the tires get fitted from scratch, you know, and you do it at the circuit. So we had given them like a little exercise, and you create stories like that. That's also part of what I do, you know. You create the stories. You don't only sort of manage the stories. You sort of try obviously to create your own as well.
I love it. And now you're self-employed, and I can tell you, coming from an entrepreneurial family, anyone that takes that step is a hero in my book. anybody that survives the first year is a warrior, and anybody who's done it for 6 years is a legend. I have just this profound respect for the amount of work and effort and just grind that it takes to do that. And you've found a way to make it work in an area that you thrive in. And I think it's rare. It's very, very rare, especially over the last, 5 years. It's been a bit of a crisis. And so, to have survived that and thrived in that, I think that's amazing. And you have some commendable names in your roster. I was actually going through your list, and it's, your clients are massive. Your endorsements are massive. They're big names. So, how's that entrepreneurial journey been? Rewarding, tiresome?
Yes, absolutely. Both and much more really. But I probably always had sort of a little like idea back in my mind, so that I wanted to do my own thing. I've always been a very bad employee, so really I pitied all my bosses, because I you know, orders and myself don't really go together. So I also pity my husband. But well, that's a different story. So and no, it's something. It's a personality thing. I think it's obviously the skills. Obviously, you need to be good at what you're doing and sell this. But much more than that, I think it's personality. It's what you said before. It's 24/7. It's in your head. It's you think about it. You never really stop. You don't really have holidays. There's always, you cannot just go away and leave everything by itself. But I don't mind that so much, because I like what I do. So it's not a problem as such. Sometimes it's tiresome, and you wish you could like go 3 weeks for a desert island and just see nothing, hear nothing. But I probably could get bored after 2 days. I don't know, but I've never tried. So but yeah, it's always been tough, particularly as I said at the beginning, is because you have an idea and you don't really know how to package it in every sense of the world. Even though if I come from marketing or PR, to package yourself is probably the most difficult. How do you do that? And so yeah, from that idea to actually have services to build everything, to get the clients on board. Yeah, but it's been a long journey, and I hope it will continue to go on for quite some time. But yeah, I love it. I have great clients. Most of them are really like family, really. You establish that relationship with them, and we're lucky because we're very, very small. We're only a few people, and so you can, because they know who they're talking to as well. You don't have somebody that changes all the time. The agencies, the big agencies, you have an account executive, and they change every 2 months or so. So that's also obviously the advantage that you have when you're small, but it's 24/7.
Does your role give you access to races? Do you still travel the IndyCar circuit and Formula One or any of
it does, but I try not to travel too much these days, funnily enough, because it's one of these been there, done that, and I've traveled so much in my life. It's probably I don't know how many times I've been around the earth, sometimes 4 times in the same year. So so I do go to races. I've been, what's the last one I've been to? Actually been to Formula One. I was in Belgium. I was in the Formula One race in Spa recently. So yeah, but I pick the races I go to, and I usually go there for a reason. It's not, I don't need to go to races anymore because it's fun. It is fun, but
right.
I don't have the time.
I understand. Okay, so you also help drivers find sponsors. This is a huge topic, and I think in young drivers, and I've had a couple of on my show, and I deal with a lot of them, and that's always, I mean, that's the differentiator outside of speed and talent. You know, your ability to pull sponsors together is almost equally as important as how fast you are on the track. I mean, how involved are you in that process for the younger drivers? Not so much.
Yeah. Well, it's more the baseline work there, because my role is more to prepare them. So it's to have, here's the word again, package. But so a young driver needs to understand the different elements of his role. So obviously he needs to be a good racer. I can't help with that. You know, I'm not a technician, I'm not a racer, but yeah, somebody else will do that. So my role is more like, okay, do you have your communication channels in order? What about social media? I try to work with them so that they have something that resembles themselves, because some might not want or be like the type to be on social media everywhere. So you need to find ways that they can sell themselves. So, and what are these ways? You know, is this public events, at races, meeting people, meeting with the press, interviews, so that kind of thing. So, because the first thing a potential sponsor will do is look at the full package. So they will Google the name, they will like look at maybe some interviews they've done, and things like that, because racing is fine, and obviously it helps if you win to get sponsors, and it's easier to talk about a winner than about 23rd place every second week, but that's not the full package, so that's more my role than actually going and calling up potential companies. I'll work with other people who do that job then.
So you're helping them put together the package, the value proposition. I mean, what would you say, because you've kind of come from the sponsor side, not necessarily over sponsorships, but Pirelli is obviously a sponsor of things. What are they looking for? And like a Formula 4 driver or a rally driver, not so much IndyCar and Formula 1, that generally speaks for itself, but from a lower tier driver where the race may be just on a YouTube live stream, or it might be, on a website live stream versus national television.
Well, the sponsors look for somebody that can speak for them in a way, that they can, that enhances their image. They're not there to like, it's not a charity, so they are obviously there for their benefit, and the benefit is that the driver will add to their reputation. So the driver needs to be polished in some way already. He needs to be able to talk properly, to know what he says, because what I see a lot with young drivers is that that you don't have the content, you don't know what to say, rather than how to say it. You don't know actually what to say, and this is really hard. I mean, if you're 17, 18-year-old, I mean, you don't have the experience, obviously. So how do you get that experience to talk about something? So, and I tell them simple things like, try and get as much information as possible. Try and, I don't know, watch videos if that is your thing, or read articles, or whatever it is that you're interested in, but try and get information from everything, so you actually, can represent a company. And also something as well, if you look at grassroots or like smaller series, don't aim for Pirelli. Don't like send just something off to Pirelli and say, oh, hi, I just done 2 kart races, can you please sponsor me? Go for companies, maybe, local companies that sort of closer to what you do, that have a connection to motorsport in some shape or form, or I don't know, your local garage, or I don't know, think maybe in smaller steps. It's like you build your way up. You don't, as a racer, you don't start in Formula 1, and it's the same thing with sponsors, really. So, and with your personality, so you need to build everything up step by step. And then if you continue doing this and that's the main thing, just stick to it, then you probably will make it a long way,
Yeah, I've always heard respectfully persistent. is, I think that I've always had that in my sales DNA.
That's the thing.
What is it? The squeaky wheel gets oil. So, just constantly and respectfully,
Exactly.
obviously, reaching out to people.
Absolutely.
How does a young driver engage you, or like what point does a young driver need you?
As early as possible, I would say. Most of them don't understand that, but luckily they have parents most of the time, sometimes teams or somebody else who sort of knows that it's the case, because if you're like 17, 18-year-old or even younger, you don't have that full picture. All you want is have fun and drive a car or kart or whatever you're doing. And you need to explain to them what that full picture is. So as early as possible is my answer, really, to get used to everything you need to do, because it is a lot.
I think that's an important topic too, because I think obviously young drivers they want to drive, and parents want them to be Formula One drivers. And I think it's important to look at, if I rely on the team to provide these services for me or to guide me through these, that's great for this season, but it doesn't offer consistency and growth and messaging. Because I think, like you mentioned earlier, you're like a family with your drivers. I think it's important to showcase that if I hired you at 14 years old, because I'm going to go for it, not because I enjoy karting or I've podiumed a couple of times, but like my life ambition, my passion, every waking moment, I want to be a Formula One driver, IndyCar driver, whatnot. It's to bring somebody in that understands me and can almost read my mind and provide your services consistently year over year, where your best interest is me, where the team's best interest is the team. Having somebody like you to really, lock arms and say, we're in this journey, this adventure together, and I'm going to do my job and get you as far down the road as I possibly can. I see the value in that. It's kind of like having, your company attorney versus your own personal attorney. I think it's really important to have somebody looking out for your best interests, or a driver's best
Exactly.
interest.
Exactly that. You that was spot on. I mean, you are there for the driver, and the team's there for the team. So even though the driver is part of the team, it's a different story, and different approach. So yeah. I think it's important, if you want to move up the motorsport ladder, or any ladder really, you need a good team around you that supports you, that you can trust, and that also sometimes kicks your backside when it's necessary. So yeah, I think that's sort of all part of the deal, and you probably don't get that. I mean, if you in a team, you will get support, but then you move to a different team and it's different support, and it's you probably don't have that consistency either.
Yeah, look, and some people are good at their job and some people are not. And I think that having you, and what you're doing, you're good at what you do, and having that year over year over year just adds to that level of value, because you naturally will get better and better and better as you go on too. So everything within that driver's career is elevated as time goes. Whereas if it's from team to team, it's like a driver. Occasionally you get a good engineer, sometimes you get a bad one, sometimes you have 5 of them, and so, your performance in your car setup is, can be affected by that. I had a bad season, I had a bad engineer, I had a great season, I had a great engineer, but then I moved teams and I lost that person, so I wholeheartedly agree with that. What you've been at motorsports for a long time. Like what was your pinch me moment? Like at what point in your journey were just like, how on earth did I end up here?
Wow. Interesting question. I haven't had that before. Pinch me moment. Well, probably it was quite late actually. I just did it. It was a job for me. In the beginning it was a job, like any job, and I didn't actually realize that maybe it might be something that is not so common. And it probably hit me when I was at the FIA in like probably that famous race, you know, my third race, sitting there having 6 cars starting a race, and you think, how on earth? What am I doing here? And why? um, but yeah, and then sometimes also after that, it's when you when you meet new people and you tell them what you do. And I always say, usually I say I work in media relations and public relations. And then only when they push me, they say, and what area? And I say motorsports. And they were like, motorsports? With the cars? You a woman? Yeah. And so, so, but I don't really mention it, because for me, it's not like, it's probably because I didn't aim to end up in motorsport. I maybe could have done golf or tennis or something completely different. I don't know, but that's how it worked out, and worked out well.
What and you may have already answered this question, but my next question is always, what didn't you expect? Like what shocked you when you got there? Like how?
What didn't I expect? That it would be so, well, that it is hard work, and it's not so glamorous. It's actually not at all glamorous when you look at it. So when you look outside motorsport, you think, wow, they're traveling the world and it's great, and I meet all these people, and I would like to do that. And I think, yeah, go for it, absolutely. But think of it, it's not glamorous. It's really hard work. It's probably, I don't know, it's not an 8-hour job a day. You know, it's a long way away from home, all the rest of it. So it is a lifestyle more than anything else. And I probably didn't, well, no, I definitely didn't know that when I started out. You know, it just, you happen to end up doing that the more when you travel, when you do all that work, and it becomes a lifestyle. So, and either you like that or you don't.
I think that that's such a key element. And I know we're running up against time here, but I think that, you know, I had Michael Italiano on my show as my first episode, you know, and that's Daniel Ricciardo's performance coach. And, you know, we were talking about, you know, yes, of course, you're flying in private jets, first class, staying in hotels, traveling the world. Like, it sounds glamorous, but as an entrepreneur who's traveled and a salesperson who's traveled, I've had 50 plus flights a years, you know, and that comes with comfort, because you travel with certain carriers for so much. It's still exhausting. It's still a grind. You still kind of wake up in the morning and you know, you don't jump off a flight thinking like, you know, wow, that was an energizing nap that I just took, you know, or, you know, wake up in the morning from your hotel thinking like, wow, this is fantastic to be separated from my family and my friends, and, you know, and all of this. And I think that's a really important aspect of, you know, while Formula One is a very glamorous sport, the business of it is still a business, and it's still work. And it is a very cutthroat, challenging industry. So I will end it with this. This is my final question with every show is I think it's important to use the people of motorsports as the baseline. So Quora is a question answer site, and it very much like Reddit. And I get asked the question all the time, and I see it flying around the site, which is, you know, I'm 4 years old, 14 years old, 42 years old, and I want to be a Formula One or IndyCar driver. And I think that the baseline that you have is you are working with these people, you know, at all levels. What would your answer be to that question? Because you obviously you see common traits, because you've had a lot of vantage points in your career. What is that element that somebody asking that question would say, do I have this? And, you know, and if so, I can pursue that career. What's that one thing that they all have?
You need persistence, I would say. So in any level, and if you're a driver, then obviously you need talent as well. So, but if you just not true. If you want to work in motorsport, any part, engineer, whatever, it's just obviously you I think today it's much easier than when I started. You know, you just network is really probably the thing. You know, try and meet the right people. Go to races, volunteer, for example. You know, every race needs volunteers. So if you really need to want to get a foot in the door, yeah, go to races, work at races, see if you really want to work at races, because as you just said, it's not the same thing looking at it on television and actually being there like the whole morning. You get up like very, very early in the morning, you're there and it's like really cold, and you stand there at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, and you go home, it's 9 or even later. And, you know, it's a good exercise. So if you then still want to do it, then yeah, just you know, go for it and apply for jobs. But again, don't maybe start at a Formula One team. You might be lucky, I don't know, but it's probably easier to start a little bit lower and then really work your way up, and then opportunities come. If you're good, it's a bit like what happened to me. You know, if you're good at what you do, people will know you, people will remember you, and you know, you just have to you just find your way. You know, I never wrote an application, I think, in ever in motorsports, you know, from just the first one I wrote, and then nothing, you know, just it doesn't happen anymore, you know. It just, so once you have your foot in the door and you don't really be really stupid, then you can be there for quite a long time.
I love it. Alexandra, thank you so much for coming on here. The audience will eat this kind of stuff up. I think that having an understanding of just the optics of the driver is a fascinating topic for a lot of people. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you. We probably could be talking for much longer now. There's so much more to talk about, I just realized. So anyway, it was a pleasure.
That's
really,
how
really
all these go, by the way. I have already started conversations of like the part twos of like, wow, we glazed over all these big things. I'd like to go in and unpack some of these conversations.
Okay, we'll be here for season 2 then. No problem.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.